Your first question today will come from Randy Peterson of the Des Moines Register. Once again, if you have a question, please use the raise hand button in the participants panel. Randy, go ahead.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. Good morning, Matt. How do you hope and how do you expect your team this spring season throughout the summer to handle the expectations that it'll have? Certainly not only within our own state, but the nationally recognition will probably be out there as well.
Yeah, I think we've really had to deal with that, to be honest with you. I think the last 3 years. So, I don't think much has changed other than maybe what we've learned along the way. And, I think what we've learned along the way is really diving back into who we really are. And I think who we really are is, we're outcome aware, but I think we've always been purpose and process driven. And, I think sinking back into those things that are really important to who we are and what makes our place special, our purpose and our process, that's kind of been us, and really not worrying about anything other than those things. And I think when we've done that, you've seen the best version of ourselves start to come out.
Is it safe to say this program now is sustained up and down the roster? As far as recruiting, it's not like you're going to be starting over at any time. It's you and your staff have recruited, so it's sustaining right now.
Yeah, I think consistency. I mean, for the last 4 years, I think you've seen a team that's, been competitive and in a program that's starting to become very consistent to who we are, how we win games, and really what we want to try to do in terms of becoming the best version of us. And so, I do think that there is certainly been consistency within our walls, and certainly consistency within the type of program that certainly we want to become.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure.
Our next question will be from Heather Dinich of ESPN. Go ahead, Heather.
Hey, Matt, I was looking up the statistics, and defensively, the conference has shown a lot of improvement over the last couple of years. I was wondering what you attribute that to, and specifically with your program where you guys have gotten better.
Yeah, I think number one, the influx a little bit of new defensive coaches. Obviously, I think a lot of changes since when I came into the conference to where we are now. I think there's certainly been an emphasis on the defensive side of the football. I think, a little bit as well in terms of scheme. You've seen a shift schematically to trying to defend some of the offenses, and certainly some of the talent that has existed in the Big 12, especially over the last probably the last 10 to 12 years of what you saw with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and, Baylor, the explosive offenses and personnel. I think you had to find ways to be able to defend those things. And I think the evolution of that, not just within our conference, but nationally, has started to catch up from a football standpoint. Certainly over the last probably 5 years, you've seen a big shift, that defensive football and defending the spread offense and some of those things that were so prevalent in the Big 12 have really started to come full circle.
And a follow-up to that, when you look at these high scores, as people who just watch games from the couch, how do you determine what is a good defense? Is there a particular statistic that you use to say, yeah, we played really well, or even though we gave up X amount of yards or points, this was a good defensive game for us?
Yeah, I think we talk in our program in not even so much about, the defensive numbers or statistics. I think what we have to be is complementary, and we have to understand that our program has to complement each other for us to have success. And I guess what I mean by that is, in terms of looking at just these statistics, it's really what allows us to be successful, and how do we complement each other within a football game and within a season to allow us to get to the end result, which the end result is obviously trying to win the game. And so, I think we spend a lot of time in those areas. I think one of the big things from our end of it, obviously, still comes down to situational football, the ability to get off the field on third down, the ability to get off the field now on fourth down, the ability to, win in the red zone. Those things are big, especially when you see offenses have the consistency to drive the football and put points on the board. But I think, when you look at it from a holistic model, we really talk more complementary football and what it's going to take to win week in and week out. And how can the offense help the defense and the defense help the offense, and obviously special teams complement everybody involved.
Our next question will be from John Schaefer of WOI. John, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Matt, what type of impact will a full offseason give this team with Dave Andrews?
Yeah, I think that's one thing when you just look at what happened a year ago in college football. You're talking about, and probably a lot of other coaches would talk about spring practice. I think I would talk about the physical development that really can occur in the months of March, April, and May. And, I think one of the things that we missed out on is just because so many kids were in so many different areas and doing different things through this quarantine process a year ago, that you really had 3 months that you didn't have your hands, on the development of your players. And, I think one thing that can be really big for not just our program, but my guess would be any college football program right now, if done correctly, is the development that we can gain back that was really missed from a year ago. And the greatest development that I see that can occur is maybe not from a football standpoint, but from a physical standpoint. And so, and I know we're really excited about that. I think a lot of my, time has been spent on how do we maximize those opportunities to develop and grow from a physical place, just because I think those are some things that we really lost a year ago, and hopefully can only continue to add to our growth and development as a football team.
And then really quick, have any of the walk-ons been able to be put on scholarship this spring?
Yeah, we were able to do that for a couple of our young men in our program. We're really excited about that. Blake Clark, who's a local Des Moines football player, a young man who had a great career at Dowling Catholic, has been our holder. We were able to put on scholarship. We're really excited about that for the spring. Connor Guess, again, another local high school football player who's come in here, was our short snapper, was able to be put on scholarship. And so, we were able to reward some of those guys. And again, our walk-on program is so critical to our success, with who we are and certainly what we become, that, we're really fortunate anytime we've got the ability, whether it be for a semester or for a year, to put those young student athletes on scholarship. It's really big, and it's certainly one of the things that's a lifeblood for our program, and we know that.
Our next question will be from Travis Hines of the Ames Tribune. Go ahead, Travis.
Hey, Matt, I'm wondering, what were the conversations or the decision-making processes like for your guys who in normal situations would have been out of eligibility if not for the blanket waiver? Obviously, you got, a nice chunk of those guys coming back.
Yeah, I think, Travis, from my end, I think the biggest thing we tried to do is just help our guys make the best decisions for them and their families. I think, quite honestly, it was opposite of any trying to recruit anybody coming back. We're very grateful that, there's a good portion of our young men that decided to come back to school. And I think a lot of those guys revolved around the question of development, in the weight room, where they saw an opportunity that they missed 3 really good months, that maybe those 3 months would help them continue to grow. I think some of our young men saw it as a avenue where educationally it was an opportunity to maximize another year, whether they were pursuing or finishing a master's degree. And so, I think a lot of things that we tried to provide is really just them and their family. Here's the best feedback we can give you if some of you are thinking about a National Football League career, and if some of you are talking about an educational career, immediately after graduation, here are the resources we can provide you. And, I think it was really interesting to me to go through that. And to be honest with you, it was very in flux in August, and the conversations were certainly a lot more detailed in December before, we really got into the Big 12 championship game and then obviously the bowl game. But, our lines of communication stayed open the entire time, and, very unique process, but a process that it was great to see really our student athletes be able to have a choice, and a lot of them use that opportunity to come back here. And obviously we're excited about that.
Was it similar at all to guys in normal years thinking about leaving early, or was it a departure from that given? I would imagine there's a lot more factors in play.
Yeah, I think some similarities for sure from the NFL piece. I think from the life piece, how do I really maximize this opportunity that's coming my way? I think that's a lot bigger. And, you get to the end of your 5th or 6th year in a program, and some of those guys, Jake Hummel would be at the end of his 4th year, that you say, man, sometimes you're ready to move on with life. Sometimes your purpose and your drive is and it's okay. It's selfish and motivated to say, man, I'm ready to take what I've learned and what I've grown with and ready to start my life. Some of our guys did that, and I'm really happy for them. But, I think that's a different conversation than maybe just, coming back to pursue football, but coming back to pursue every aspect of your life. That was really big for me to kind of get that total buy-in value if you were deciding to come back to school here.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our next question will be from Matt Bellinson of the Iowa State Daily. Go ahead, Matt.
Matt, kind of touching on that last point about players choosing to come back, just maybe outside of the development and social piece, just what does it say about those guys that they believe that coming back here, there's more for this team to prove this season, and there's more on the table that you guys can accomplish? What does that say to you?
I don't even know if it's that as much as I hope it's a reflection of our culture. I hope it's a reflection of, man, I really love playing football here at Iowa State. I really love the fact that I can grow on the field, and I also have the opportunity to grow off the field. And, I feel like there's a benefit to me coming back here. And so, obviously, again, I think that goes back a little bit to Randy's question about, the outcome. And I think that's very different than who we are and who we've proven to be. I think the outcomes and more on the table or what we've got to prove, I think we've proven a whole lot, to be quite honest with you. And so, we are outcome aware, but I think our purpose and our process and, the ability to continue to grow in our process and become better at our process, I think that's the part that's exciting, that there's young men that want to do that even at this age. So I thought that part was probably as big as anything for me.
How big is it to have guys like Jaquan and Dylan and Kene and some other guys get a pro day this year? Obviously, last year, due to the virus coming in, it kind of shut all that down.
Yeah, I think just really big, Matt. I think for them, these guys that have sacrificed a great deal here and, have really put themselves in position where a pro day can really help them. I think those are 3 names of, 3 guys that I think we all feel have an opportunity to play at the next level. And, all guys that can truly benefit from a pro day where they've got the opportunity, especially in this unique year where you didn't have scouts and that were able to come to practice, that maybe were able to visually see these guys perform and to be able to have that occur, live, I think is really big. And obviously we're really excited for them and really excited for the opportunity to be back, for all of our student athletes.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question will be from Sam Stuvey of the Iowa State Daily. Go ahead, Sam.
Hello, Coach. I just want to get your thoughts on Deion Broomfield and what kind of unique perspective he's going to have and what you expect from him at the being a safeties coach.
Yeah, I think, again, you're always looking ways to better yourself, and you're always looking ways to grow your program. And, I always see an opportunity to bring somebody new in as a huge opportunity for growth. And you bring somebody like Coach Broomfield back to Iowa State, who, chose to come to school here at Iowa State, had a great career here at Iowa State, actually played in and had some of the biggest plays, prior to maybe us getting here in the history of this school, and a guy that is respected by everybody within our university on the academic side, on the social side, in terms of our athletic training room, in terms of everybody that's touched this program thinks the world of Coach Broomfield. And then you see a gentleman that has success, plays professionally, then has the opportunity that he says, I want to get into coaching. And instead of kind of starting on the high end of things, goes back to starting a Division III football and working his way up to where he gets to the National Football League, as the assistant DB coach with the Texans, and then wants to come back to his alma mater. I think it's just huge. I think it's huge for our players to see somebody that, that was in their shoes at one point, that had the ability to have success and go on and play in the next level. And then also see somebody that was in their shoes succeeding in their professional field at the next level. And so I just think a huge win for us in our program. And then I think you talk character, cultural, great smile, I think great energy about himself. I think you can tell it's already had a huge impact and a huge positivity in our hallways. So we're really excited to have Coach Broomfield here.
And then transitioning to Jarrell Brock, how important is it for him to have a good spring, especially with Kene Nwangu and Johnny Lang not being there next year?
Yeah, man, I think if you watched us play last year, man, the last 6 games, you would say Jarrell Brock was as important as anybody in that running back room. I think played almost an average of 15 to 20 snaps a game, was critical blocker on some third down situations, had some big catches and some big moments for our team. I think the really unique thing for Jarrell is his improvement last football season from the start of the season to the end of the season maybe was as drastic as any player in our program. And some of that was due to some COVID issues and some issues early on in fall camp. But, he worked through it. And boy, oh boy, I think he really gave himself great confidence leaving the football season, really had a great finish. So I think what he did on the field last year really propelled him into not only confidence, but, expectations for himself leading into the fall next year.
Our next question will be from Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic. Go ahead, Nicole.
Hey, Matt. I'm just curious, what you might have changed or shifted about spring ball based on your experience last year and kind of what you learned about guys' bodies or keeping them fresh heading into like the actual fall season?
Yeah, Nicole, I think from our end, we're wholesale changing. I think one of the things that that quarantine did is me as the young coach, I always felt like we were off in spring practice. There was a lot of things I probably did because we had done it before and I didn't want to make the change because we were having success. And then it was like, man, last year, and I watched from a health and safety standpoint, the rewards that we got kicked back to us from what happened in quarantine a year ago. And that doesn't mean that there's not ways to practice our sport and grow fundamentally and technically, because I really believe there are without contact. But I do think really measuring the amount of time that we put contact and collision into practice in the spring, I think will be very minimal, and really putting our focus on the physical, bigger, faster, stronger growth process and the equal fundamental and technical growth process that we can make. And then, kind of more of that philosophy from a physical standpoint, contact collision standpoint towards fall camp. So, I think our players benefit from it. And I really feel like we as a program where development is critical to our success can actually develop with a better mindset and really a better calendar moving ourselves forward. So, it's been really a great mental challenge for myself and our strength staff, and, something that I'm really excited about and think we can hopefully continue to move ourselves forward for how we need to win here at Iowa State.
So, did you just kind of start from scratch? How did you structure that?
Yeah, I really think we took a little bit of what we learned, with some of the rules that we were giving last summer in terms of return to play by the NCAA and the Big 12, and kind of the OTA model that we learned, and really kind of were forced to learn a little bit on the run in June and July, and said, boy, how can we apply some of these values maybe to what we deem as spring practice or whatever that spring model needs to look like. And so I think there's a lot that we can take from there as we studied it, reflected on it. And then also, I do think a lot of ways you are starting from scratch, in terms of what you learned. And obviously last year was a unique year And I think it's also going to be another unique year going into this 2021 season, because not only are you going to deal with, we were really unique in the Big 12. We played in pods of 3, which was kind of a really nice, if the NCAA really was looking and studying this, I think they would find the right ticket of what we did last year, where pods of 3 had a week off, pods of 3 had a week off. I think there were, for the health and safety of everybody, there was some really good things that were able to come out of that. But unfortunately, we're not going back to that. So now you're kind of back to a traditional, at least as of today, a traditional college football model. And so I think navigating that and not going overboard, just because you have technically a spring practice that's able to be given back to you. It's really, how do you manage all the things that are going on and give your young people the best opportunity to be successful. So yeah, I would say starting from scratch, but using some of the things that kind of came our way a year ago as kind of a litmus test for us to be able to say, how do we move ourselves forward?
Our next question will be from Michael Swain of Cyclone Alert and 247 Sports. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach, just wanted to ask you about Coach Mauser. He's someone that was with you back at your Toledo days and has been with you here at Iowa State. I'm just kind of curious what you feel like he brings to your staff as a position coach now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about Coach Mauser, probably twofold, and maybe I should say it threefold. I would say number one is relationships. I think Coach Mauser, from, the day he started with us at Toledo as an unpaid intern who said, I want to come to school and at the University of Toledo and work for you, to where he is today in our program, is Taylor is an incredible relationship driven person. He's a great servant leader. He knows how to develop tremendous relationship and trust with not only the coaching staff, but the players. And I think that's a huge value, especially it's who we are and what we've done. And I think his growth over the last 7 years together, it's been really enjoyable to watch. I think the second thing is, from a technical standpoint, Coach Mauser's made himself into an elite technician. He's studied the game. He studied some of the great players that have had success, both at the tight end position and the receiver position. And, I think from a skill standpoint is maybe one of the great, skill technical coaches that I have had the opportunity to be around. And he's put a lot of time and effort into really growing that craft. And, I think it's interesting because you see the Alan Lazards and you see the Hakeem Butlers and you see those guys, they come back and really work with Coach Mauser. And I think that's a credit to him being able to provide those resources to really good players to make good players better. And I think you saw that, even last year as he shifted some of his focus with the tight ends and some of to be honest with you, their growth and development. And so, and then I'd say the last piece of it from a recruiting standpoint is Coach Mauser's always been a great evaluator. And, he's been on the front end of some of the evaluation pieces. He started off in our recruiting department, and I think has always had a really good eye of not just, are you a good player or not, but also, man, do you fit Iowa State? Do you fit us, who we are, what our program's about? And I think has got the ability to kind of take the ego out of the recruiting and really find what fits best for the whole culture and the whole program. And, I think those three things are probably the three strong suits from my end of why, we're really excited about Coach Mauser and really what he brings to our program.
And just changing gears real quick, you welcomed 7 newcomers and early enrollees earlier in January. I'm just curious what maybe your first impressions have been of that group.
Yeah, I don't think, nothing to say yet individually. But what I would say is just from a maturity standpoint, from a ready to go to work standpoint, from a fit into our cultural standpoint, it's been as smooth of a transition as I've seen. And, a lot of credit go to those young men. And, also I think, again, what was one of the values that, most of these guys hadn't even been on our campus yet because of the recruiting rules. And so I think a lot of the value of developing relationships in this new model, in this new era, and the ability of true meaningful relationships, I think that's really helped us. And it really helped our young guys get off to a great start.
Thank you.
We will go back to Travis Hines of the Ames Tribune. Go ahead, Travis.
Matt, you might have answered this at least in part with what you had to say about spring football, but towards the end of last year, you guys talked a lot about the changes that you decided to implement in January after some self-evaluation, and just wondering, in addition to the changes for spring football, was there anything else that you decided to shake up a little bit this year after the self-evaluation period after the season?
Yeah, I think there will continue to be, as we head into each phase, I think it certainly did with how we trained coming back in January, from as simple as who trained with who to, where are some of our guys and how do we get some of those guys, if they're not where they need to be, where they need to be. And then also, the unique challenge in a year like this, Travis, where you got some really good players, and how do you challenge those guys and make the good players even better? And really all those things are our responsibility. And I think it always starts with starting back over at square one, rebuilding habits, who you are in the weight room. And that's kind of where we are right now. And then obviously this next phase of, some sort of spring practice, spring development phase. How do we do that better? And obviously you can't maybe holistically reflect, because we obviously didn't get that a year ago, but I think we were prepared to change that model even a year ago before this hit. And I think even having probably more clarity with what happened a year ago to how that happens. And so, I think what we try to do is before each new phase comes our way, really spend a lot of time in reflection as a staff. How do we do it better? What did we learn? And then how do we move ourselves forward? And obviously, the next piece of that will be the summer. And then, certainly as we dissect, going into next season, and, we try to stay, really a kind of a step ahead of each phase with our reflection process.
When it comes to spring practice and lessening contact, it seems like historically contact was looked at as a critical component by a lot of coaches in practice. That obviously has changed in the last, maybe generation of coaches. Why is that maybe not as critical as it was previously thought, to have a lot of contact in practice?
Yeah, I don't know. Now, I would say, the one thing that I do know from our end is our practices here are really physical when contact is available. And so I think, the thing from my piece, I guess, I don't know if I can comment much on anybody else, but the one thing I do know at this point in where we are is when it is time to go, our guys know that it's time to go, and they go. And there is, because there is in our sport still, it's a contact collision sport, and there has to be a buildup to get to that point. But I think the ability to do it, in a controlled, safe manner, and giving our kids the best opportunity to play their best on Saturday, I think it needs to be measured and it needs to be valued to get to be our best. So, I'd say that's the best way I can answer that, just because I think really I've only been able to look at it from, an Iowa State perspective, who we are, where we're at. And obviously I think what we need to be successful. And I think that's different for every program and every team.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next question will be from Jared Stansberry of Cyclone Fanatic. Go ahead, Jared.
Hey, Coach. I'm curious. You talked about being able to build relationships and stuff like that in the recruiting process, and how that maybe has gotten easier with some of the alterations. But how much more difficult maybe is the evaluation piece of it than it is when you can't go out and actually see people live? And, you can obviously see things on film, but you can miss things like when you can't actually go and watch somebody in person.
Yeah, I think that's really man, that's a great point, Jared. I think we actually have had really good conversations with that, to be honest with you, over the last 6 weeks. How do you evaluate those things? How do you evaluate things like punch and strike and, competitiveness? And, I probably watched more wrestling matches and high school basketball games online than maybe I would have ever, other than my daughter's, 5th grade and 7th grade basketball games. It's been the most used sports that I feel like I've watched online in the history of Matt Campbell. But, I think what we've had to do is try to really evaluate that, and not only are we trying to evaluate that, there's elite evaluators that get a lot of money at the next level that are trying to evaluate those things. And so, I think what we've tried to do is ask some of those questions, become better evaluators off of the video. But, how do you find ways to measure some of the things that have been very critical for us to measure in terms of, does this young man fit? Is this young man have the traits positionally that we deem are critical for those young people to develop in our program? And so you got to even think back to a year ago, we were at least out in January in recruiting. And a lot of that January process was, put into, signing last year's 2021 class. So, I think that's a very unique process right now. And then obviously we'll see what happens with restrictions lifted or not, if we're able to get out on the road at some piece in the summer, but it's certainly a challenge.
Is that a challenge too for the kids? Maybe. I mean, I know guys like Mike that maybe were a little more under the radar, Mike Rose, who, didn't have any Power 5 offers or things like that. Like if you can't go and see them in person, could more guys maybe, slip through the cracks or something like that, I guess?
Yeah, I think that's always realistic. And yet, I still think that is one of the great things about our sport that, hopefully as we kind of climb back into some sort of normalcy, there'll be senior football seasons, there'll be junior football seasons. And the one thing that I've always still believed in, and this is, I say this because this is how we found Mike Rose, is, boy, there's still videotape evidence of who you are, right? And playing the sport of football, and it's great to watch wrestling, and it's great to watch all these sports, but there also is great value in watching a young player play the sport of football on videotape. And, I think that to me, some areas were able to play last year, some weren't. And I think that's really challenging for those ones that weren't. And then yet, you hope you're getting back to some sort of normalcy where you can watch a senior football season or a junior football season and make a really good decision. So, I guess to answer your question, Jared, I think it will be tricky, and, maybe it'll be a little bit slower of a recruiting process. And, sometimes I would say, I know from our end, we take it a little bit slower at times. And I think that's helped us. So, maybe that may help or hurt young people. But I do think hopefully we'll be back and young people will have an opportunity to prove themselves, within the next year.
We're going to have our final two questioners of the day here. Randy Peterson, the Des Moines Register, go ahead.
Matt, when does spring practice, whatever you're calling this spring, when does that officially begin, and how much of a part of it will Trevor Downing be?
Yeah, Trevor is full go. Trevor is full go right now in our winter program. And so obviously that part's exciting for all of us, that, I think he was teetering back on to almost full strength, kind of right around the bowl game. And, I think, out of the safety for Trevor and, just getting back to where we needed him, and in the awareness level, obviously we didn't pull the trigger on putting him back on the field at that time. But it's been great to have him have a full off season and really back full go within our winter program. And, I think we'll aim to get started really in the 1st of April as we kind of transition from a more of a, just strength and conditioning model to, whatever that split is, a 50-50 split of strength and conditioning and then football practice. I see that happening, really for the month of April for us.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Hope to talk to you again. Hope to talk to you again sometime soon.
All right. Thank you.
And we'll wrap up with Matt Bellinson of the Iowa State Daily. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Matt, we haven't talked to you since you and Jamie were able to kind of restructure your contract. Just talk to us a little bit about how that came about, and especially how important it was to, how important it was to get that additional money for your assistant coaches.
Yeah, I think, Matt, from my end of it, first of all, I'll just say from, President Winterstein and Jamie Pollard's standpoint, I really appreciate them, taking the time to listen to what is really important to continue to grow our program. And what is really important is we have great people, and keeping, really great people, invested in our program and continuing to develop the young people within our program. That's the key. And the people is not one person. It's a staff, and it's a group of people that we're really fortunate to have. So, I guess just at the end of it for me, a sincere, a sincere appreciation that, there's support here to support the great people that we have within our program and our organization that make our program special. And so, I think that was really the great discussion. If there was any discussion at all of just continuing to find ways to keep those people, involved in our program and continue to grow in our program. And, from my end, obviously, just the consistency and the ability to continue to have that consistency within our program is really important to me.
All right. That's all we have for you today, Coach. Thanks for your time.
All right, guys. Thank you.